You have never touched anything, not once, not the chair you are sitting on, not the floor beneath your feet, not another human being, not ever. The atoms in your hand have never, not for a single instant, made contact with the atoms of anything else in the universe. And yet, you feel solid ground. You feel texture, pressure, weight, the unmistakable sensation of something real pushing back against you. So, what are you actually feeling? The answer is light, invisible light. Trillions of photons flickering into existence for slivers of time, so impossibly short that the universe itself, by its own rulebook, doesn't notice they ever existed. These photons are not streaming from a star. They are not bouncing off a surface. They are conjured from nothing between the electrons of your body and electrons of the world, carrying a single urgent message. Stop. You shall not pass. And the most unsettling part, these photons, the ones that hold your body together, that stop you from phasing through the floor, that make every solid thing solid, they shouldn't exist at all. They are violations, kind of cheats. In a way, they are loans taken against a cosmic bank that looks the other way for exactly long enough. Let's follow this all the way down. Here's the fact that you have probably heard before, but never really sat with it. Atoms are mostly empty space. A hydrogen atom, the simplest atom there is, consists of one proton and one electron. If you scaled that proton up to the size of a marble, the electron would be orbiting somewhere about 3 kilometers away. Everything in between? Nothing. Vacuum, void. And it's not just hydrogen. Every atom in your body follows the same rule. The carbon in your bones, the oxygen in your lungs, the iron in your blood. Each one is a tiny, impossibly sparse solar system of nucleus and electrons with vast oceans of emptiness between them. So if atoms are mostly nothing and you are made of atoms, then you are mostly nothing. And so is the chair, so is the floor. Two clouds of empty space approaching each other should, by any reasonable expectation, pass straight through. And yet, they don't. The question isn't why solids feel solid. The question is why anything feels like anything at all. Let's see the standard answer you learned in the school, and that is electrons repel each other. Like charges push apart. Your electrons meet chair's electrons, and that electromagnetic repulsion is what you experience as solidity. But that answer is a placeholder. It tells you what happens, not how. How does one electron know that there is another electron? They never touch. They never come close. The closest they get is still an immense distance at their scale, far farther than the diameter of either particle. So, how does repulsion actually travel across the gap? This question, this simple, almost childlike question, leads directly to one of the strangest and most successful theories humanity has ever built. The theory is called quantum electrodynamics, QED for short. And here is what it says. When two electrons approach each other, one of them throws a particle at other. What is that particle? A photon, a particle of light. The first electron recoils from the throw, like a person on ice skates hurtling a bowling ball. The second electron catches it and recoils the other way. And what we call repulsion, what we feel as solidity on the floor, the resistance of the chair, the impossibility of walking through walls, is just this. Two particles trading invisible light. Every push, every pull, every chemical bond that holds molecules together, every nerve impulse traveling down your spine, every thought flickering across your synapses. All of it runs on photons. But there's a problem. These photons, the force-carrying photons that make the universe solid, is not ordinary light. You cannot see them. You cannot detect them directly, even in principle. And every conservation law physics has written down ever, they should not be allowed to exist. Let me give you a photon, a real one, the kind streaming through your window right now. That photon has energy. It was born in the heart of the sun, a nuclear fusion reaction that converted a tiny sliver of mass into pure radiation energy. It took tens of thousands of years to flight its way from the core to the surface, and then 8 minutes to cross the vacuum of space to reach your eye. Every step of that journey, the energy book balanced. Mass in, energy out. No cheating. Now, let me give you a virtual photon, a kind that holds your body together. This photon comes from nowhere. It has no source star, no fusion reaction, no parent particle that lost mass to create it. It simply appears, pops into existence between two electrons, exists for a span of time so short that human mind cannot meaningfully process it, and then vanishes. It is never seen, never measured. It leaves no trace except for one thing: the electron it hit moved. In the mathematics of QED, virtual photons are treated exactly this way, as particles that are real enough to carry momentum, real enough to change the trajectory of matter, but not real enough to be observed. They exist in a kind of ontological gray zone between being and not being, real enough to push, but not real enough to see. And the reason they are permitted to exist at all, the reason that universe allows this flagrant violation of energy conservation, is a principle most people think they understand, but almost nobody has thought through it to its deepest consequence. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now, most people know Heisenberg's principle in its position momentum form. You cannot simultaneously know exactly where a particle is and how exactly it's moving. The more precisely you pin down its location, the less you know about its momentum. Push one to certainty, and the other one dissolves into fog. But there is a second version, less famous, far more radical. It pairs energy with time. The more precisely you try to measure the energy of a system, the less certain you become about when you measured it. In other words, about its time. And the flip side is that if you look at a span of time so short the universe itself cannot pin down when it is, then energy becomes undefined. Not difficult to measure, not subject to experimental error, just undefined. The energy of a system over a sufficiently short window can be anything at all. It can fluctuate, it can spike, it can briefly, violently, impossibly become enormous, so long as it returns to normal before the cosmic account closes the book. And sufficiently short here means 10 to the power of minus 35 seconds. That is Planck time, the smallest meaningful interval of time that universe recognizes. Before one Planck time has elapsed, time itself as coherent concept may not even apply. And in that window, in that ungoverned sliver where the rules have not yet snapped into place, energy can be borrowed from nothing. And this is exactly where the virtual photons come from. They are not particles in the normal sense. They are the fluctuations in the quantum fields that permeate all the space. Brief, localized excitation that borrows energy against the uncertainty principle and pay it back before anyone can object. The amount borrowed times the time borrowed for must multiply less than a tiny constant, Planck's constant divided by 2. And as long as that inequality holds, the universe permits the loan. No questions asked. Now, here is what this means for the floor beneath your feet. Every cubic centimeter of empty space, what do you think as perfect vacuum, as nothing, as void, is not empty at all. At Planck scale, the vacuum is churning, seething foam. Particles and antiparticles, electrons and positrons, quarks and antiquarks burst into existence in matched pairs, drawn from borrowed energy, exist for a sliver of time so short it barely qualifies as an event, and then annihilates each other back into non-existence. The debt is repaid. The vacuum goes quiet, and then immediately, relentlessly, it happens again. This is not speculation. This is not philosophical interpretation. This is a direct, measurable, lab-confirmed fact of reality. Two experiments, one in particular, have left us no room for doubt. The first is called the Casimir effect. Take two metal plates and place them in a perfect vacuum, separated by a gap of just few nanometers, billionth of a meter. According to classical physics, nothing should happen. There is nothing between them to push, no air, no radiation, nothing at all. And yet, the plates move. They are pushed together. The force is tiny but measurable, and it has been measured repeatedly, precisely, unambiguously. What is pushing them? Virtual particles, vacuum foam. Between the plates, the gap is so small that certain wavelengths of virtual photons cannot fit. They are excluded, suppressed, blocked from appearing. Outside the plates, the full foam rages on. The imbalance, more virtual particles pushing from outside than inside, creates a net pressure. The vacuum itself, by virtue of not being empty, squeezes the plates together. Nothing is pushing on something, and that something responds. The second experiment is called Lamb shift. In the 1940s, Willis Lamb measured a tiny energy difference in hydrogen atom, a shift in spectral lines that classical quantum mechanics could not explain. The electrons in hydrogen atom was ever so slightly nudged out of its predicted orbit. But by what? By the foam. The virtual particles winking in and out of vacuum were physically jostling the electrons, slightly but measurable. The vacuum was not silence backdrop. It was an active participant. It was touching the atom. When Lamb published his result, it launched the field of quantum electrodynamics into its modern form. And it confirmed in hard numbers something genuinely disorienting. Empty space is alive. So let's trace the chain back up. The vacuum is not empty. It is foam of virtual particles permitted to exist by the energy-time uncertainty principle. Those virtual particles include photons, force-carrying photons, the same species of particles that stream from the sun, but existing on borrowed time, appearing and vanishing between charged particles. These photons carry momentum. They push. And when two electrons approach each other, that push, that cascade of trillions of virtual particle exchanges is what repels them. And your body, your chair, the ground beneath your feet, all of them are collections of atoms. Each atom a cloud of electrons, each electron firing and receiving virtual photons across the gaps. A ceaseless, relentless, trillion times per second barrage of invisible light. And that barrage, that conversation between particles conducted entirely in impossible flashes, that is what your nerve ending report as solid. So let this sink in. You have never touched anything. What you feel as solid is not contact. It's repulsion. It is light. It is alone. The ground beneath you is not a floor. It is a storm of virtual photons conjured from the vacuum of uncertainty principle, flashing into being for an interval of time that rounds to zero, pushing against the storm of virtual photons that surrounds the atoms of your feet. And that mutual push, that shared impossibility, is what holds you up. You are not standing on matter. You are suspended on a sea of light that should not exist. The universe at its most foundational level does not permit perfect bookkeeping. There is always a sliver, a gap, a flicker, an ungoverned instant where the rules relax. And in that sliver, Everything we call solid is being built and rebuilt, lone by lone, flash by flash, from nothing at all. The poet William Blake once wrote about seeing the world as a grain of sand. He had no idea how right he was. Inside every grain of sand, every chair, every floor, every hand you have ever held, there is a universe of impossible light, a storm of impossible particles, a depth to the vacuum, and it is never fully repaid because it is always being borrowed again. You are not a solid object in an empty universe. You are a pattern, a persistent, coherent, stable pattern in a sea of quantum fluctuations. The atoms that compose you are themselves held together by same virtual photons exchange that holds you apart from everything else. Your very existence as a discrete, separate entity is not a given. It is something the universe is doing, moment by moment. Every instant of your life, from the moment of your birth to this exact second, the vacuum has been working to keep you together and to keep you apart from everything else. Thanks for watching.